Alrighty, welcome back. We're going to be doing some work today on my dad's 2019 Turbo S. As you can tell, she's sitting a little low, and mostly that's because these tender springs are collapsed. I'll show you a little bit better picture of those in a second, but basically what you need to know is on basically all razors, they come with a dual rate spring, or they have a top spring and a bottom spring with the separation collar in between them. For whatever reason, especially on the like XP1000 type chassis, that upper spring collapses quite a bit, and then you lose a significant amount of your spring rate. Fortunately, we were able to get with R1 Industries and grab some, replacement springs that have a lot more spring in their spring, unlike these collapsed ones. The trick is we're going to try and install these without dropping the shock out of the axle, out of the upper mount. And what that means is it's going to get a little more sketchy than normal, but that's what you're here to see. So, okay, let's figure it out. All right, I bought these springs from R1 Industries. I don't think they're who manufactured them. They're drop shipped from someone else. But either way, they had a great deal. R1 has always got great service. Check them out. When you get these kits, you'll notice there's two different things. If you check this out, the diameter of these, one is bigger, one is smaller. Bigger one goes to the back, smaller one goes to the front. And if you're not smart enough to figure that out, they're labeled F for front and R for rear. So we're gonna start on the rears. The goal is to get this thing back to ride height, or maybe even a hair above it, just because it's gonna probably collapse again later. Ride height for every Polaris like S or R that I've ever dealt with is 16 inches from ground to skid underneath the differential on both ends. Right now, this one is sitting at not that. It's lower. Let's check it out. All right, our test subject here is sitting at a whopping 12 and a quarter inches. So that means we got to come up about 4 inches. And let me tell you, you don't think 4 inches sounds like a lot, but I just did a trail ride with my dad, and he rode my rig and I rode this one, and stuff that I was like, oh yeah, I can just space over the top of that. Wrong. No, it makes a huge difference. So recovering that ride height is going to be really great. Let's get after it. I think the first thing we got to do here is we're going to get a jack set under here. We're going to get the rear end jacked up because we're going to do the rear ends and then the front ends, and then we'll set it all up so that it's setting at the right height and everything's ready to go. Let's do it. All right, in a perfect world, we would use a jack like a Pro Eagle or something with lots of reach, but we're not in a perfect world, we're in my world. And so we're using a block on a regular jack, and we just kind of want to make sure it's in the right spot and get it up. And if you think this is as sketchy as it gets, just buckle up, because we're going to do more sketchy stuff, because why not? All right, let's get this thing in the air. All right, now we are officially as in the air as we need to be. And we know that because we can move the tire. But what I want you to look at is this right here. So this is actually kind of the spacing you should see between coils when you have these things installed new. And if you remember what they looked like before, it was not that. I'll show you the fronts for perspective. They look like that, which is bad. So let's jump back here and let's start going through what we're going to do to get this out. Really, the first thing we need to do, just need to undo this shock bolt. And I'm hoping that that's the only thing we need to do as far as install goes. This shock bolt's going to come out. We are going to swing this shock backwards to where we can compress the springs, pull the retainer plate off, and then rotate this retention ring up out of the way and get our new tender spring in here and put this all back together. And we're going to probably compress this all with, ratchet straps, because why not be sketchy with it? All right, let's do it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this nut and bolt down here are an 18 millimeter. We are going to see if the handy dandy 3/8 Super Impact can pull it off. I don't know if it will. We'll find out. not at all. Okay, we're gonna go get something to throw on this. Maybe I can just crack it loose as is. Maybe not. That is pretty solid. Okay, we're gonna go get something else. Alrighty, here's the contraption we built. We have a 1/2 inch breaker bar into a 3/8 adapter into our same 18mm socket. Let's see if we can get this to pop it loose, but I'm not really sure. Oh man, that was on there incredibly tight. Okay, we can probably roll that off with the impact now. All right, now I'm gonna see if we can tap this out. Not actually sure which way it needs to go, but I think we need to take some pressure off of it. So I'm gonna let the axle down, the swing arm down, till the tire touches just a hair, and then we'll hope that bolt can come out when it gets slack. Okay, I let it down too far, but I did feel there was a moment when this got loose. There it is. Boom, just like that. Okay, give it a little extra pump to be sure. I'm gonna save our shock bolt and hope this swings up out of the way like I expect. And it does. Now we get to play with getting the thing off of there. All right, you may not know this, but in your handy dandy little dinky toolkit that comes with these things when they're new, they give you a shock collar tool. Is it the best one made? No. Is it even really good? Also, no. But does it work? Yes. So that's what we're going to use to back this collar off. I decided to do that rather than ratchet strap it because I don't think I actually just have enough throw on the ratchet strap right here to collapse this thing. So we're going to try and just back the collar off as is and go from there. All right. I tried turning this collar. It didn't turn. So we're going to go back to being sketchy. I'm going to go through here with this guy down around the bottom here. Let's see if I can get this, you can see it. And there's a reason why I do this way, because if you don't, your strap is too long and you can't actually get the throw you need to compress this thing, because that's really all we're trying to do. All we're trying to do is compress this spring up here enough to get this plate at the bottom slipped out. So I'm gonna hook this on up here. We don't want to compress the thing fully. We just want to grab that upper spring. And this is where I say things are sketchy, because they are. There's a lot of power in these springs when you compress them. A lot of stored energy, if you will. So I don't really recommend doing this, but I'm also doing it. So I don't know what to tell you. I've done lots of springs like this. Don't do this. That's my advice in general. Unless you are okay with potentially losing a finger, something like that. Anyway, very fun. But all we're trying to do, really, is get a little bit of slack at the bottom so we can take this plate off. And these things are not fun. If you've seen spring compressor memes, well, this is same thing we're doing right here, which is not ideal. But that's what we got, so we're doing it. All right. I think, actually, if we can get enough pressure off that top, just to spin the cord out, or the upper shindig there, it might be okay, but I need to reset this because I can't actually ratchet this as it is, and I'm gonna have to get this over on the other side. So this is where things get fun. And that is the sketchiness behind doing this way. All right, I can get better ratchet on this now. So now we're gonna really go for it. And I'm watching at all times because I need this to come off, but I also need these up here to not come off. Unfortunately, we don't have to go too far to get that lower piece off. Okay, we're gonna need a hammer and tap this collar up, and then we should be free. So you can see I have a little bit of a gap right here now. I'm not putting my fingers in there because it's bad, okay? But we do want to get this up a little ways. Which means gotta get this rubber up the shaft, or this stuff has to come down from up here to where we can turn it. But I don't really know which way we want to go with this. I think we're gonna try and pry that rubber up with a screwdriver, not our fingers. All right, gotta remember there's still a lot of force in this thing, but it does want to kind of work up. The other thing that's important is we're not touching this shaft at all, just because we don't want to accidentally mar it and then introduce a leak or something on the seal. We're just touching the rubber and the metal on the outside. So there's our piece we're trying to get out. We are very close. Ooh, so close. All right, we're gonna go a little bit more on the straps. I think that's what we need here. One more click there, one more click here. Boom, now we got our piece out. Okay, this is where the thing gets fun because we have to release the pressure on these without killing everybody. So, best way to do that is just do it. One side up. Other side off. And as you can see, there is a ton of pressure in this. So realistically, doing this with a spring compressor is a lot better, but here we are. Okay, as we pull this off of here, you want to be real careful to not let this shock swing back and again mar the piston. Just want it to go back calmly. And there we go. There's our tender spring we're replacing. There's our main coil. We'll get this stuff wrapped up. Okay, I want to point something out up here. See all that gunk built up at the top of this lock ring? That's what's causing it to not back off when we need it to. You can see it kind of better right there. I'm going to spray and clean that all out because this lock ring turns really well right now this way. But we need to take it all the way to the top to get the right adjustment on this. So we need to clear those threads so we can run this all the way through to the top. Just a little bit of brake clean and then throw brake clean on all the way up to the top, just so that it's easy to spin this collar all the way up to the position we need it to be. And we're going to check on our install kit because that is going to tell us how far down we set our threads before we try to put this thing back together and then make some real adjustments on it. All right, we got our preload collar adjusted way up. We're gonna see if we can fit this all back on and go from there. Again, you wanna be real careful not to damage our piston rod because that would be bad, okay? All right. Well, it looks like we're up here. We're not quite out of the woods yet. You can see we don't really have enough gap here to slide our retaining ring in there. So what we're gonna do is go according to the manual. Get this thing all the way up just to be sure. And then we're gonna just get this fully clear. All the way to the top. And then we'll put our ring in and then we'll set our preload. While we're doing that, I just wanna show you, look at this. This is the uncollapsed height of these two springs. They're both the same. It's just that this one is all fatigued and is gonna collapse immediately and the new one's not. Okay, we got the whole thing loosely assembled now. We got our collar back on. We got our preload collar up here. It's super loose. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna strap this up kind of out of the way like this, just so I can get to that preload collar a little easier, because now we're gonna have to actually start putting preload on it. The kit calls for 1 inch of preload, so we're gonna go till that thing touches, and then we're gonna give it an extra inch, and then we'll set our ride height after it's all on the ground and ready to roll. Okay, we got our retainer in, we got our mainspring in, we got our dividing ring clocked correctly. You can see the arrows out here. The tender spring ends here. The mainspring ends on the other side of the disc over here. One thing I wanted to point out on these, if you look right here, I've basically aligned this upper spring with the top of this Fox sticker. That's about 1.25 inches below just the main contact for the whole spring set. I've found that that works out pretty well for a baseline for when we drop this down, and then we'll adjust the ride height to just meet 16 inches when we get it down, when we get it ready and set. Okay, so let's get this bolt back in. We'll set this side down, and then we'll take care of the other side and then look where we're at. All right, you guys. Okay, we got both sides in. So let's take a look. This side, you see how those are not collapsed anymore? Sorry, this light is incredibly bright. That's a little better. And now we have some space up there at the top. That's great. Let's come over here. Same thing. And we're actually pretty close to dead on with our height. If you look right here, we are actually at 16 inches, which by the book, well, 15 3/4. By the book, that's right on, 1/4 inch low. I want to take it 1/4 inch above that, just because these springs are going to sag a little bit. So we're going to take it up just a hair. And then the other thing we can do, we can check our half shaft angle and make sure it's right around 14 degrees. And that's another good way to know we're not too tall, too shallow, anything like that. So we'll get those tweaked up just a little bit and we'll check the half shaft angle and the clearance. All right, well, we got the back end adjusted. We are sitting right at 16 inches. I've rolled it back and forth a bunch, tried to get it to settle out. So it should be okay to ride there. And as you can see, we've got much better axle half shaft angle, sitting around 14 degrees, which is right where we want. It's about midnight. I'm not gonna do this tonight. I'm gonna go grab some sleep and I'm gonna come back and finish the front in the morning. Alrighty, we're back. It's the next morning. We're gonna pull this front tire off. Actually, we're not gonna pull the tire off. We're gonna do basically the same thing we did on the back up here on the front. The only difference is it might actually be easier to take the front shock entirely off and get it out here on the tire to work on it. But we'll see how this one goes. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not. It just depends on kind of how you're feeling. But anyways, if you don't want to deal with all of this BS on your own, you should hit up my buddy David at Shock Prep Unlimited here in Southern Utah. He does a great job. This video is more for educational stuff, but if you want someone who like really knows what the hell they're doing, he's your guy to hit up. But anyways, let's get this thing in the air and let's at least pull this lower shock mount and see where we go from there. All right, on this front side, I'm gonna actually pull the tire off. That's just because I want more space to work right here. This is a lot closer together than it was on the rear. So I'm just gonna take the tire off just so it's easy to fiddle with this stuff. Okay, we got our tire off. These are the same size on this side as they are on the back side. That means 18 millimeter on the lower shock mount. bolts. Oh, these ones are a little looser, which is nice. So let's see if we get these off. What we can do here. Turns out I don't need a backing wrench, just need a backing socket. Okay, on this side though, one thing to consider, the fronts have washers on the nut. So don't forget those. And those go on the nut side, not the bolt side. Wiggle this bad boy up and out a little bit. What can we do here? See if we can run it out backwards a little bit. All right, there we go. Shock is free. Now we gotta get these cups off, like the same thing we did on the other side. I know I keep saying the other side, but it's not the other side, right? It's the other, or it's the back end. But here we go. Let's see. We've got a little bit deeper cup, but I don't think that this actually sits any deeper over the nub on the shock end. I think it just sits the spring higher up. But either way, that's what we're after now. So we'll get that pulled out, and then same thing. We might use the ratchet straps to compress this again. I don't know. These are a little shorter. That makes it a little harder, but might be doable. We'll see what we can do. Okay, we are gonna hook up the ratchet strap stuff again. If you are gonna be a menace to society and do this with ratchet straps, it's pretty important that you do this with one on each side of the spring, so you get an even compression and it doesn't cock the spring one way or another, because if it cocks, it's more likely to slip. And then the other thing is, it's important to loop this bottom if you can, not only because there's not enough length usually in a ratchet strap, but also because then it gives something for it to actually have a full, like, secure lock to, rather than just being sitting on the spring on both ends. That said, buy a spring compressor, pay David to do it. Don't do it like this. That's probably better anyway. All right, there's just not enough room in here to fiddle with this to get what I need out of it. So we're gonna pull the whole shock out. All that is another 18 millimeter bolt on the top shock mount. We'll get that whipped out, and then we'll pull this thing out and put it somewhere where we can work on it. All right, we got this all out. Rather than use the ratchet straps to try and compress this, I started on it. It feels a little icky. And by icky, I mean it feels like it might let go, which I'm not a big fan of. So I'm gonna actually just back this nut all the way off, just right here. I've got this obviously set where the external reservoir is just kind of providing the leverage, so I can just turn this collar off. But we'll get this off and then we'll go from there. All right, as you can tell, I'm wearing different clothes again because this is actually day 3. Why is this day 3? Well, because my wife wanted to get a Christmas tree. So we went and got a Christmas tree, and now it's day 3. This job, if you just sit down and do it, does not take this long. I've had a lot of interruptions. That's where we're at. Okay, I also kind of gave up, kind of cheated. And I went and bought a coil spring compressor because this cup should fit on this spring with, I don't know, minimal help from extending the shock or whatever, but it doesn't. So because these are significantly stronger springs up here on top and not collapsed, I'm gonna actually have to coil spring compressor this, put the shock cup on, then put it in and check ride height. I will say when I took the factory springs off, it was still very tight all the way out here till the end of the adjustment. So I'm not super concerned about this. I've seen some videos, I've seen some pictures of other people do this, and they were able to just squeeze this in with very minimal effort. Doesn't look like I'm gonna be that lucky, so we're gonna throw the compressors on it, sunk it down, put this on, and then yeah, we'll adjust ride height from there. I think I'm not gonna actually have to go too far with this for adjusting ride height, just based on how tight everything already is, but let's do that. Now I just put this whole thing back together and realized I didn't even show you how you hook up the coil spring compressors and how you use them. Fortunately for you lot, I'm an idiot, and I also need to clock the crossover ring and the bottom retaining ring here. So when these sit in the car, there is actually a way for the upper spring and the lower spring to align. And it's basically that you want, let's see if I can see it here. You want these ends of the springs to overlap slightly, maybe about an inch. And that'll give you the best flotation of the crossover ring while it sits in the car. And then also you just, personal preference, I flip this bottom retaining ring so that it's backwards facing inside the car. That's all. But because I'm an idiot, I'm gonna show you how to hook these compressor springs up again, clock those, and then we'll put it all back in. All right, let's do that. Okay, as you can see, we have our two compressors. They have these locking pins that go through and lock them onto the separate coils. The important thing with these things is to make sure that they are 90 degrees apart from each other and that you torsion them or torque them evenly. Also important, keep your hands clear. There is a lot of force in these spring compressors. And you don't want to get your fingers caught in them. Okay, as you can see, this just came loose. I know the way this is going to ride is going to be about right there. And then I need the crossover ring to be reclocked. So you can see here's the end of my one upper ring. I'm going to bring the end of the lower ring. Bring the end of the upper ring till it overlaps slightly. See that in there? And then we're going to let all the pressure off of this and mount it up. Okay, we've got the shock reinstalled. As you can see here from my light, I don't have the nut on up there. See this right up here. And I just have this nut on loosely. That is because I'm just gonna set this down with it plugged in once I get the other side done, just to make sure that I'm okay on my ride height. So it's plugged in so that the dynamics is there. That makes a little bit of difference when the key comes on and off. No bolts fully tightened. We're just trying to see, does this sit at the right height? And if it does, we'll be good. And then we'll come back through and torque that all. But we got to get the other side swapped out real quick. I won't make you watch that because you just watched me do this one. But yeah, we'll figure it out from there. All right, we are wrapped up. We have 16 inches of clearance in the front now, 16 inches of clearance in the rear. I've bounced this thing up and down, rolled it back and forth. Now it's time to tighten up the bolts. But once we're done with that, we are done and out of here. So anyways, I got to show you the sketchy way to do it on the back with ratchet straps and the not so sketchy way to do it on the front with the coil spring compressors. And just want to throw it out there that I appreciate everybody watching. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing, we'd appreciate that as well. We'll catch you on the next one.